Hello, superheroes of the world. So today I want to share with you a little story and why it's relevant to me, but more importantly, why it's relevant to you. You see, a few years ago, my entire life fell apart. My entire life came crumbling down in front of me, and it's not a story that I like to tell all the time, but it is a story that remarkably changed my life, and I think it might appeal to you. And it's a story of when and why I went on my first ever backpacking journey, where I started off going to Australia. And I have a surprise for you. I have an offer for you that I'm going to tell you about at the end of this story. But the idea of why I went to Australia and when I went was a very powerful moment in my life. It was a turning point. It really truly was a moment where I went from being who I would call Mark, the simple, version of myself who had been an entrepreneur for 3 years. I had sold and ran an indoor skate park, and I had just sold that skate park kind of unwillingly, unexpectedly, let's say. And at the exact same time, I was also graduating from university. I was also shedding the only identity I had had my entire life, from the time I was 3 years old, going to pre-K, all the way up until I graduated from university in a program that at the end of the day I realized was only teaching me about things that I didn't want to do in life. But that inflection point, that period of time, changed me, because at that moment when I went on this journey to backpack, and the day after I sold my business, I was on a plane going to Australia, basically immediately after I received the money that I now had to travel the world. I had jumped and embarked on a journey I had never been on before, and it was enormously scary to me. I had never traveled alone in my life. I had never really done anything of this nature. I had never backpacked, quote unquote, ever before, and I was going to the other side of the planet. So you can imagine that there was a little bit of nerves in me, but at the exact same time I was oddly confident, because as much as my story had ended, as much as my entire identity had been shattered, I now had the opportunity to build a new one. And so on this enormously long journey towards Australia, one of the first things that I ended up doing is I ended up having the opportunity to think, to be on this epically long plane ride. I was thinking about what are the things that I want my superhero self to be? What are the things that I want to define the new me? How can I show up not only as Mark, but as Markangelo? How can I start to embody my ideal life? And how can I start aligning myself with all the things that I had started to learn about the planet? See, at that time, in 2010, when I went and embarked on this journey, I had started watching documentaries that were changing my life. And in those years of watching those documentaries, I had actually, on that plane ride, decided I was going to watch a documentary a week for 52 weeks. And so you can imagine how depressing that was. You can imagine how intense learning about things like climate change and where money comes from and the vanishing of the bees and GMOs and this, that, and the other. You can imagine what that all started to portray. But on this plane ride, I decided to start studying how people made decisions, how people decided to live their life, and what that looked like. And it was a topic that really started to interest me more and more and more, and it was called NeuroLinguistic Programming. And so on this journey, I read this entire book, NeuroLinguistic Programming for Dummies, on this plane ride. And it made me realize that most of what our life is, most of what we believe about the world around us is truly a story, right? I have a different set of stories and beliefs that I grew up with. And you have a different story and set of beliefs that you grew up with. Now, we might be a little bit more similar than, somebody who grew up in China, for example. But those stories started governing my life in a good way in some cases. Certain great habits that I learned from my parents, like being punctual and always being honest. But there was also certain limiting beliefs that I had, like the only way to have a good job is if I went to university and went to school. The only way I can have a big impact on the world is if I, got a 6-figure job that I worked 9 to 5. And that just started to ring as being untrue for me. It just started to feel like something was missing in that equation. And maybe you feel that way too. Maybe you feel like whatever you're doing right now, whether you're in school or working, maybe you feel like your job is not fulfilling. Maybe you feel like you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur and you just want to push yourself to live that ideal lifestyle even more. Because I know even today that I am continuously pushing myself. Even today, my superhero self, my Michelangelo version of myself is not always present compared to that old lingering Mark, that ego that sometimes needs to die over and over and over again. And I recognized that on that plane ride, and not only on that plane ride, but then throughout my entire trip in Australia, I had set myself free. You see, Australia for me had always represented a land of adventure. The land in which there was a whole bunch of things in the jungle or in the forest that could kill me. A whole bunch of deadly snakes and spiders and things that were, I don't know, it just always intrigued me. It always stood out to me. And beyond going to see the kangaroos and koalas, beyond eventually doing all amazing stuff like, scuba diving, the Great Barrier Reef, bungee jumping, skydiving, whitewater rafting, literally seeing like the entire east coast of the country, having the journey of my lifetime. Beyond all of that, what I had effectively done is rewritten the script of my life and my story. And that's on that trip that I came out with the clarity of realizing that what I wanted to build was communities. What I wanted to build was movements. What I wanted to do was change the world one mind at a time. And I realized that movement starts with me. That movement started in me before it can ever start in you. See, I can't inspire you to change if I'm not investing in my own change. I can't inspire you to be an entrepreneur, to quit your job and go and live your dreams unless I was doing it. And the best way for me to support somebody like you is to show you the way, because over the last 9.5 years, I have been an entrepreneur and I do now live my dreams. You see, the thing that I am most passionate about, the reason why I decided to watch 52 documentaries in a year is because the thing I am the most passionate about is learning. And I believe that the best way to learn is not only to absorb the information, but then to take that information and try and teach it to the next person. And that inspired me to create what I now do for a living, coaching and helping people one-on-one via mentorship each and every day. And not only do I do it via mentorship, but I also do it as online classes because I want to be able to impact as many people as possible. In fact, the idea of Superhero Academy had been laid in my brain way before I even realized it was there. Because when I was young, somebody asked me, Mark, or they called me Markangelo, ironically. Markangelo, what do you want to do when you grow up? And my answer, and I remember exactly where I was when I said it, and what it was, as I said, I want to be Batman. I want to be a hero. And as I went through my life, I started to realize that people were making me move away from that. People were keeping me away from the idea that I actually could be a hero, but I actually can. See, I believe that we can change any problem on the face of our planet today. We can take on everything. Whether you believe that we have to take on the New World Order and you dove into conspiracy theories like I did at that age, or whether you believe that you can impact the life of one person just by helping them out in the simplest way. You can cast ripples and waves by just throwing one stone. But that stone can eventually grow. And so now, fast forward to today, I am hosting and planning a trip back to Australia. Back to where this entire thing started for me. And it's not just because of it's Australia, right? It's not just that the land there is magical and exciting. It's not because we're going to go and do, have a lot of fun and go scuba diving and skydiving, all those things again, okay, with all the people who are coming with me on this epic journey. But more than that, I'm going to teach you what I learned about what it takes to build great habits and change your own mindset. You see, if you're listening to this, you're probably the type of person who wants to change the world. You're probably the type of person who wants to help other people. You're probably the type of person who wants to be empowered, who wants to living their passion and doing that for a living and earning all the rewards that come from that, whether it be money, whether it be fame, whether it be recognition, whether it be being seen as a master, whether it be all of those combined. We all want to feel a part of something and a part of something bigger than us. And I totally get that. And I've spent the last couple of years, ever since this journey, building stories, building movements, learning and challenging myself each and every step of the way. And the best way for me to learn and the best way for me to continue to grow is to now bring somebody like you on that journey. So if this story speaks to you, if you feel like you are interested in joining us in Australia for a few weeks, if you want to go on the adventure of the lifetime and not only face some of your physical fears like maybe skydiving or scuba diving, but you also want to change and upgrade your life, if you want to be that person, and if you know you are that person, then why not apply and join us on our Australian Bootcamp with Superhero Academy. Tons of amazing people will be joining in. You will have tons of support, tons of online courses, tons of things, because that journey doesn't start just then. It starts right here and right now. It starts with your commitment. It starts with you joining us and being a part of it. So if you are going to be a part of it, if you want to change your life, if you want to upgrade your story, if you recognize that it starts within you, then you are a perfect fit to come on this epic adventure that we are curating for a small and special group of people to change the world. Let's do it together. Let's empower ourselves. Let's change the planet one small step at a time, one ripple, one wave, one movement at a time. Let's make it happen. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, see you in Australia.